Hello, I'm Charles Kovess, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Kovess Show. This is episode 166. In this week's episode, I celebrate the centenary of the birth of my dad in Hungary in 1923, on the 9th of September. He was a man who lived life on his own terms because he had clarity of what those terms were. When you have clarity, you have power. Power to achieve what you truly want. My dad understood geopolitical issues that impacted him and his family. And he understood that because he chose to educate himself about those issues. He understood how the world works. That understanding led him to leave Hungary to come to Australia in 1949. I share 11 key aspects of his values, his philosophy, his principles, and his disciplines. I hope this episode inspires you to continue on your journey of ever-increasing clarity so that you too can live life on your own terms. Our format for the show is that I share the big idea. I share 6 resources to help you implement aspects of the big idea relevant to your life. I have a quick review of key happenings over the course of the last week, and then the foundational principles for the show and details about my background come at the last part of the show for newer viewers and listeners, so that regular viewers and listeners don't have to keep watching and listening. So let's go with today's big idea. Perhaps it's not so much a big idea as today's big topic. I want to celebrate the centenary of the birth of my dad, Zoltan, in Hungary on the 9th of September, 1923. That's one day ago. I'm recording this on the 10th of September. My dad died in 2007 at the age of 83. Dad was born in Zalaegerszeg, 115 kilometres from the Austrian border. Hungary was a wonderful place to grow up in the 1920s. I've read some interesting books, even after the Treaty of Versailles, when Hungary lost 2/3 of its territory. In the heart of Hungary through the 20s, it was a pretty special place to be, and my dad grew up in that environment. He loved Hungary. He wasn't particularly healthy as a kid, had child problems, and the doctors said he wouldn't live past his teenage years. He was 16 when World War II started. In fact, it started 8 days before his 16th birthday. Just imagine that, being in the heart of Europe in a war when you're 16. It's happening to a lot of people today too, isn't it? He had actually a good time during the war. He was 22 when the war ended in 1945. 2 years later, he found himself in a refugee camp in Austria because he escaped from Hungary because the communists had moved in from Russia in alliance with the US, because Hungary had been, to some degree, on the side of the Germans, probably, in fact, if you look at the geopolitical elements, forced into not being an enemy of Germany. The Russians came in, Dad went to Austria. He didn't want to leave the country he loved, but he knew what communism was. He met my mum in that refugee camp, together with her older sister and her mother, and they got married in that refugee camp in 1948 and then arrived in Australia in July 1949. So Dad was almost 26 years of age. My mum was 16. Imagine that. And she was 6 months pregnant. Couldn't speak the language. They arrive, having left Europe in the middle of summer, arrive at a place called Bonagilla near Albury in July, bitterly cold winter. They couldn't speak the language. They had a Hungarian English dictionary, or an English dictionary that they wrote out. My dad said he wrote it out 3 times on the boat. At least on the boat, Mum had her sister. Her sister was married to another bloke called Zoltan, and with her mother, they then came as a family package to Melbourne. My dad died in February 2007 at the age of 83. My mum, who is now almost 91, is still alive and well. Contemplate this. Mum and Dad had 6 kids, 14 grandchildren, 8 great-grandchildren. 2 human beings arriving into this country, Australia, and at the end of his life achieves what he has and produces what he has, a family that is still functioning and a wife who's still alive. My dad lived life on his terms. He had values. He had a philosophy. He had principles. And he had disciplines to live his values, his philosophy, his principles. I want to share with you 11 key aspects to inspire you with one or more of these to adopt them in your own life, or to help you gain clarity around what aspects of these are relevant to living life that you want. Firstly, he had a scale of values. As you know, I have a scale of values, and coffee is very high on that scale of values. Julie, I value coffee deeply. A scale of values. He was teaching me that when I was about 13 years of age. How ironic that for 30 years I've been teaching companies and people to understand what they value, what is of value, and the relative order of what you value. You see, it makes a big difference if your values are health and fun, and you put fun ahead of health. Makes a big difference to your life. Understanding your scale of values enables you to make choices. He kept encouraging all of his kids to decide what their values are. Second aspect, he understood the need and the benefit of giving back to his community. He was a great contributor to the Hungarian community here in Australia. He knew that when you give, you receive. You never know where you're going to receive from, but he knew. Third aspect, he was committed to lifelong learning. All his life, the house was groaning with books. He would invest money in books. He invested in the Encyclopedia Britannica, the great books of the Western world, so his kids would all be exposed to books and learning and lifelong learning. All his life, he was learning. He took a deep interest in geopolitical issues, and that's why he understood the horrors and the threats and the evil of communism. Fourth aspect, he did not allow his family to invest in a TV. He said TV would hugely impact your ability to think. So the first TV that we had in our family was when my younger brother bought one himself. Dad didn't buy one until way, way, way down the track. No TVs for you. Makes you stupid. The fifth key aspect, have an open mind. Now, my dad loved having debates and arguments, friendly arguments, but he prided himself on having an open mind. In other words, through that lifelong learning, he was willing to change his mind. And one example of that was in 1963, at the age of 40, when he had 6 children, the youngest of whom was 3 years of age, and he was in poor health at the age of 40. He learnt about a naturopath, only one of 2 in Melbourne at the time, Lawrence Armstrong. And he totally changed his behaviour at the age of 40. That's why he was able to live till he was 83. And then what I learned from that same naturopath 2 years later has influenced my life ever since. Having an open mind means you are open to new possibilities, and none of us know everything. So to shut your mind off from possibility blocks your progress. Key aspect number 6. Dad had no expectation on government. He considered most politicians to be dills, to be self-serving. He relied on himself. He understood self-reliance. He did not want to rely on government, and he did not. Key aspect number 7. Work. Work hard. At one stage, Dad had 3 full-time jobs, believe it or not. His third job was as a night porter at a major hotel in Melbourne, so he could sleep on the job. That's where he got his sleep. He worked 3 jobs to support his family. He was willing to work hard. Key aspect number 8. My dad and my mum are both great nappers. They take naps. And Dad understood, obviously, when you're working 3 full-time jobs, when you get 10 minutes spare, find a place to nap. But I urge you to understand the value of having a nap. Having a nap is like a hard disk defrag of your computer. It puts your mind, it enables your mind to resort itself, even if just a 10-minute, 15-minute nap. Key aspect number 9. Be willing to teach your children and be disciplined with your children. He imposed quite strict discipline, but it was fair. And we knew what the rules were. And I had, whilst I was upset because I had friends who didn't have the same disciplines, Dad knew what the boundaries were, and you were not allowed to go outside those boundaries. It was interesting when I got to university at the age of 17, so still not an adult, because I think in 19, whatever it was, I think you had to be 21 to be an adult. I think that's right. And 18 became the age of adulthood a bit later on. But all restrictions on me disappeared as soon as I went to university. Dad said to me, you no longer have to ask permission to do anything. Key aspect number 10. He understood money. He understood the role that money plays. He made a decision that family, that love, that learning was far more important than money. He said money was just an enabler. His purpose in life was never the accumulation of money. And finally, key aspect number 11. He was perpetually happy. His key discipline was to choose to be happy. You've heard me talk about that. I learned that from him. Choose to be happy. He was happy. He didn't wait until circumstances were perfect. He was happy. And if you bumped into him, no matter what his state of health was or what was happening to him, he would, when someone said, how are you? He said, I'm happy. And he said, that's how you be happy. You choose it. It's a very important lesson. Stop waiting for perfect circumstances. My dad had clarity about his values, his philosophy, his principles, and his disciplines. It gave him great power to live life on his terms. I do have that clarity. It's a great way to live life on your own terms. I wish it for you. And I hope that my show helps you to gain that clarity so that you can live life on your terms. So, living life on your terms. Well, let me share some resources that are relevant to what we're talking about. The book I want to share with you is the memoirs of Cardinal Joseph Mindszenty. Now, he was a Hungarian cardinal who was tried by the communists, put in jail in a show trial, and then spent years in political asylum in the American embassy in Budapest. And his memoir is a salutary, important reminder of what communism truly is about. On the back of the book, he says, I am publishing all this, that's his memoirs, only so that the world may see what fate communism has in store for mankind. My dad understood that. That's why he left the country he loved to get away from communism, because he could understand and he knew the evil that communism is. My song this week is quite an interesting one. Or my tune this week is Lara's theme from Dr. Zhivago. And the movie Dr. Zhivago is worth watching because as a kid in the 60s, I fell in love with Julie Christie, or maybe it was lust, who knows. Julie would probably say it was lust, but, I would say it was love. And Lara's theme, that movie is all about 1917, of the communist revolution, of Lenin coming to power, of Tsar Nicholas being executed, and that powerful story. And then Lara's theme through it, it's such a reminder of the geopolitical issues that happened through the 20th century. My spiritual tip is that you spend time on your scale of values. Your values are spiritual matters. What do you value? It's a difficult issue, but I urge you, and I have a process, I can share that process with you if you send me an email, of how you work out your top 10, top 12, no more than top 15 values. You need to understand this so you make clear decisions, because that's what gives you power. And this is spiritual work that is worth doing. My quote for the day is about communism, and it's from Ronald Reagan, who deeply understood the threats of communism. And he said this: how do you tell a communist? He is someone who reads Marx and Lenin. How do you tell an anti-communist? It's someone who understands Marx and Lenin. Brilliant insight. My spot of humour for you, relevant to communism. In Russia, in Soviet Russia, a citizen was standing in line to buy a car. When he finally reached the front of the line, he specified the colour he wanted and paid the full cost of the car. The man at the counter took his money and asked him to come back in 5 years to pick up his car. The citizen asked whether he needed to come in the morning or in the afternoon. The man in the counter said, "Comrade, 5 years from now, what does it matter whether it's in the morning or in the afternoon?" And the citizen replied, "Well, comrade, you see, the plumber is supposed to come in the morning on that day in 5 years' time to fix my broken toilet." That's what communism's like. And lastly, a health tip, not to do with communism, but certainly to do with the health regimes that my dad pursued, the deep commitment to health, and that is to explore the value of intravenous vitamin injection. I have done it. I recommend it. Do some exploration about what's called vitamin infusion straight into your blood. It's a wonderful way to get a big, powerful hit into improving your health. So, take the steps in today's big idea, particularly the 11 key aspects of how you can live life on your terms to make a beneficial difference in your life. A life that I believe is meant to be all that you're capable of making it. My aim for this show is to provoke you, inspire you, motivate you to increase your self-awareness, to find your passion, to live life with passion and with real clarity about who you are and who you want to be. I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel or the Rumble channel or the podcast. Please, if you like it, share amongst your family and friends and work colleagues. Discover more about the self-awareness and passion quest at my website, charlescovest.com. And for corporate programs and public programs, visit covest.com. And for further information about the types of ways that I help people of all sorts. You can access my books, Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance, at both of those websites. Now, let's review some of the key happenings over the past week that have grabbed my attention. And before I do, I think another sip of coffee is one of the key disciplines that I need to pursue because it's one of my key values. Ha ha. Okay, my guest on TNT Radio, and I urge you to listen to TNTRadio.Live. All the episodes of my shows are available, but yesterday's guest was John Droz Jr. from North Carolina, a scientist, an educator, a mathematician, a researcher, a thinker, an author, a publisher. Very interesting conversation on education, on fighting for our freedoms, and well worth thinking about the issues that he raises, particularly educating children and grandchildren if you have them. I urge all grandparents to take an interest in the education of their grandchildren. I was delighted to see the fast exit of Alan Joyce, the CEO of Qantas. The Qantas brand has been trashed, just like the PwC accounting brand has been trashed, because big companies that sprout values, that sprout principles, unlike my dad, don't observe them. And I'm delighted to see that they eventually pay a big price. And Joyce, I'm so unhappy about that man, so I'm so pleased that he's gone. And the political antics of that company and Joyce himself are, in my opinion, disgraceful with what he's done with that company. And over the 15 years that he was the CEO, he earned $125 million. So it's people like Alan Joyce who drive support for communism. But as George Orwell famously said in Animal Farm, all animals are equal under communism, but some are more equal than others. I'm appearing before the Victorian Government Hemp Inquiry this week. I'll put a submission in, so I'll be answering questions on my submission. Hemp is a wonderful, wonderful solution to many, many communities. If you want information on hemp, obviously, come and talk to me about that. But it'll be fun appearing before the government inquiry and being questioned by them. I'll report back to you on that questioning. The other big issue is the ongoing lies of the Australian government in relation to Qatar Airways wanting to have extra flights into Australia. They wanted 21 extra flights a week. That's 3 a day. And the lies and the obfuscation are breathtaking. Reinforces, how do you know a politician is lying? His or her lips are moving. And lastly, I'm again delighted that Novak Djokovic, a true warrior for integrity, for personal integrity, for sticking to his values, his principles, and avoiding bioweapons being jabbed into him against his will, has made the final of the US Open. At this moment in time, I don't know whether he's won or not, but I'm delighted to see that, because he sacrificed his ability to compete in various Grand Slams because he stuck to his principles, his values. I honour him for that. And over the course of the week, I've done my exercise. Julie's done her exercise. I'm fit and healthy, and I follow my dad's demonstration to me, his example to me of choosing to be happy, because I am happy. And I hope you choose to be happy as well. And if you're not, then keep coming back to this show, because this show aims to provoke you to choose to be happy. So, if you're new to the show, stick around for the foundational principles of the show and further background about me. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Until next week's show, I wish you a week of passion, of integrity, of clarity of values, of embracing the challenges that life gives you, and ever increasing awareness about who you are. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye. And now, for viewers and listeners who want to know more about my background and what else I do with my life, as well as the foundational principles of the show. Here we are. Since 1993, when I left my legal career, a career that I love, to become Australasia's passion provocateur, I have inspired and provoked and educated and motivated people all over the world to discover and pursue their passion. I have helped people via the books that I've written, via speeches at conferences, via in-depth team building programs, workshops over 1, 2 or 3 days, or over 3 months, 6 months. And I've coached people of all ages, one-on-one, from small, medium and large enterprises, government enterprises, helping them to identify the often tiny changes that can make a massive difference. One of my core principles is that freedom is what makes us truly human. That's why one of the greatest threats that government imposes on you to force you to observe its laws is the threat of imprisonment, the loss of your freedom. Just think about that. Government says if you don't behave yourself, we're going to put you in jail. No, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my freedom. That's a reminder to you of why freedom is so important. Without freedom, you and I are not much different to animals. If you were locked up in a cage for the rest of your life, how different would you be to an animal? This commitment to fighting for freedoms for all people is carried out by me primarily through 5 channels. Number 1, preserving the freedom to pursue your passion. Number 2, inspiring you to be able to be free through excellent health. Number 3, helping preserve freedom throughout the world through the expansion of industrial hemp, a magnificent agricultural crop, an almost miraculous crop that enables every community to thrive independently of government. In this way, the power of government to take away freedom is minimized. Number 4, fighting for freedom through legal strategies. So I do work as a legal strategy consultant, as an interface between clients and their lawyers. And number 5, as chairman of the Australian Institute of Comedy and as a board member of the Australian Cartoon Museum, fighting for the freedom of thought and speech through uncensored comedy and humour, through avoiding political correctness in the comedic space. When you block freedom of speech, freedom of thought, that's the beginning of the end of your freedoms. The foundational principles for the Charles Covess Show are founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Your self-awareness added to your passion will guarantee that you are successful. And the best definition of success I have found in life is that success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideals. The progressive realization of your worthy ideals. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous principle and quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. I wear my red jacket for all my shows. Red is the color of passion, so that when you see me on the YouTube version, it reminds you that when you see red in your life, you ask yourself the question, am I pursuing my passion? What am I passionate about? Am I still passionate about that? What might I newly be passionate about? Each week I explore one big idea that can change your life. And it's just one big idea because there's a chance you will remember it. If I give you too many ideas, then we get confused and we don't do anything. Clarity leads to power. Confusion kills passion. Each week I share simple and practical resources that you've heard me describe in the earlier part of the show. A spiritual tip, a health tip, lyrics of a song, a book, a quote, and of course humour. This show is not politically correct. I have no intention of being politically correct. And I love certain addictions, including my addiction to great coffee, my addiction to exercise, my addiction to reading, and my addiction to certain other unmentionable in public type behaviours. Who would know what they are? This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spiritual life. So if you don't like discussion of spirituality, this show is not for you. I promise you that I don't include anything in this show that I don't consider to be true and that I have not found to be useful. in the work that I've done over the past 28 years, but also over the past 50 years in business, as a lawyer, as a consultant advisor. I only want to share stuff with you that is of value to you. Finally, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to contact me at charles@covest.com. Again, thanks for watching and listening to my show. Bye.